Well, I mean, this is the existential creed, right? Like, life is meaningless, death is inevitable, we're alone in the universe. We're forced to define ourselves based on these three truths of life, if you will. Something have been learning through the therapeutic process is the ways in which I am driven to succeed, to be certain ways, to always be invested in learning, how that is a byproduct of me needing to define myself against my religious upbringing. That's probably the biggest comfort of religion. It's that bad stuff's going to happen in your life, but they always have the frame of this is part of the larger God's plan or whatever. There's the afterlife and it's going to be great. And, I won't have this pain in the afterlife. But that's the comfort of it. But I think we lose something by living in that comfort. We really lose our connection to this immediate world and our ability to deal with these things instead of just like pushing them off.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic podcast with Marie Delafont and Cass Midgley.
We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight, not by faith.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 254 of the Everyone's Agnostic podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. Today, Marie Delafont and I talk with Joe, an ex-Christian whose education and upbringing was so far removed from the real world that Joe determined he would educate himself and not be like his family or Christian community, only later to realize that by continuing to identify as not that old way, he was still imprisoned by it. Joe grew up a farm kid in rural Northern California. His parents mistrusted public education and homeschooled him all the way through 8th grade. Although for Joe, homeschool meant more farm labor than learning, and the only social education he got was through the church. In 8th grade, his parents decided it was time for him to get a real education, which meant sending him to a small private Baptist school where he learned more about the Bible than reading or math. His deconversion journey began when he entered college and learned that the world is a much bigger place than the space within the walls of a church. Before we get into our talk with Joe, I have an announcement to make. I am putting this podcast out to pasture. The following is a formal announcement I posted on social media yesterday. To my beloved friends that I've made through the Everyone's Agnostic podcast, a new chapter of my life is opening up before me, and after 5.5 years and over 250 consistent episodes, I am putting the show on an indefinite suspension. Our last episode will be October 28th. The timing to move on feels right, and my heart and mind have consented enthusiastically. No, this is not one of my ADHD impulses to stop the show like I've done many times over the 5 years. This is actually happening. Marie Delafont will be starting her own show with more details to come. I want to thank Marie for being such a powerful voice on the show and in my life. She really is a life coach. I want to thank Bob Pondillo for encouraging me to do this podcast in the first place, extending his broadcasting experience to the show, and serving as an impeccable co-host those first 4 years. I want to thank all the guests who've had the courage to share their story from this platform. You each have changed my life and stretched me. I want to thank all the listeners, and especially those who financially supported this work. I am proud of it. I consider it to be the greatest creation I've ever brought to the world. All the episodes will remain available through the same podcast mediums and at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The Everyone's Agnostic podcast helped thousands of people all over the world navigate their personal departure from supernatural beliefs. My hope is that this vast library of archived episodes will continue to help new people that are just beginning that journey, and there are many of them. Not only am I proud of this work, I'm proud of the people it attracted. You restored my hope in humanity. I continue to be awed by the strength, beauty, integrity, intelligence, and vitality of you godless people. Never have I been so impressed with a group of people. You have given me tears of joy almost daily since June 2014 through our interactions. Conversation is an art form, and this podcast was my art. My legacy is secured in it, and I proudly stand by it. Thank you for everything you did to make the Everyone's Agnostic podcast a reality. It's clear to me that the communities and friendships that have formed around this podcast have a life and vitality of their own, apart from the show. People who stopped listening years ago continue to engage with the EA communities online and in real-life gatherings. I plan to stay involved as well and encourage you to as long as it serves a need in your life. Thank you again for making this awesome EA chapter of my life the miracle that it was. I will always cherish this experience. We can say goodbye to the podcast, but I'm not going to say goodbye because I'm not going anywhere. Sincerely, Cass Midgley. So 2 weeks from now, Marie and I will put out the final episode. We'll talk about the new podcast and a target date for its release. She's considering naming it Everyone's Autonomous. I kid you not. Whenever Marie releases her pilot episode, I'm going to simultaneously publish it from this platform as well. She's talking about possibly waiting till January. Also, for our final episode in 2 weeks, I'm going to try to tape a conversation with Bob Pondillo for old time's sake. I've been talking with a friend for over a year about an exciting new career opportunity. Recently, it became a reality, and I start at the end of October. I'll say more about this in 2 weeks, but it's just going to be a very demanding job, and there would be no way for me to do the show and the job. Thanks to David Hayward and his teachings on money, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making money. Unapologetically. So, let's get on with the show. We taped this conversation on September 15th, 2019. The intro music is Just Groove Me by Dave Weckl. The segue music on this episode is a percussion groove I created and recorded. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is.
So, Joe, are you going to use your full name?
Just Joe's fine.
Okay, Joe.
Are you out to people, or...?
For the most part, yeah. It's
okay.
Just, my parents are semi-savvy on the internet, but I doubt that using my last name might be a little bit more identifiable.
How old are you?
38.
And your parents are still Christian or religious?
Yeah, my dad's neither here nor there, but my mom's still really invested, and
Would be deeply disappointed.
Deeply offended, yeah. It would keep her up at nights, let's just say that.
Oh, no, really that bad?
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand. I think it did the same to my mom.
My situation is more like we just don't discuss these things.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of like I'm out and I don't believe in God. I'm not in the church anymore. It's just more like let's talk about the dogs and the weather and something a lot more light.
Pleasant, yeah.
Yeah. And once in a while she'll send me like, I don't know, something to read or a video to watch trying to convert me. But for the most part, we just keep it off the table.
Okay, so she's aware that you're not as religious as she wishes you were. Okay.
Yeah, there's still that fear that I'm going to hell, of course.
Okay, so let's go back to your childhood. Do you have any siblings?
Older sister, younger brother.
And where are they on the religious spectrum?
We're kind of across the board. So my sister is into the higher power thing, but not necessarily the conservative Christian God.
Right.
She just kind of found her own path.
Right.
And my brother, as the youngest of three siblings, is kind of the wild child, of course. He's in sort of like the I don't really care, I'm just going to live my life thing. Yeah. I think me in the middle is the one who has struggled most with the deconversion process. Just this is your standard oldest, middle, and younger child situation.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then what denomination or what sect of Christianity were you raised in?
Well, we were like non-denominational because I was homeschooled growing up, and we were in a tiny town in Northern California, and just a non-denominational church there, but still on the real conservative side of things. But once we got, I think it really started to take a full head of steam when I went to Baptist school in 8th grade because my parents decided that we needed a real education, and I'm air quoting over here.
Over homeschooling.
Yeah. as opposed to homeschooling. Well, we didn't really learn anything homeschooling either because we were farm kids, so we worked all the time.
Yeah.
It was more about the labor. It's amazing that I knew how to read and write, when I went into 8th grade.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I learned so even last night at that event I was at, somebody mentioned homeschool videotapes. And I think that's where I learned the majority of my learning being homeschooled, which was minimal at best.
Just watching videos?
Yeah, this videos of classroom instructors talking to students. And my sister did those because she was the one who wanted to be educated. So she picked up on those, and I would just sit around and watch them too. And that was the most schooling that I can remember getting because, my instructor, that's air quotes as well, being homeschooled, I'm going to do that a lot today, by the way, was my mom who, barely graduated high school. She grew up in small town Washington, knew probably a 6th grade level of education. So that was my instructor, growing up in the homeschool environment.
So this is a spoiler,
Yeah.
but is this why, Joe, that you work in education?
No, that's more of a random event.
Oh, okay.
But I think it is a reason that, we're getting in the depths here right away. This is a reason that I have tried very hard, and continue to try very hard to educate myself, to sort of place myself in opposition to that upbringing, to say that I grew up this way, uneducated, and then educated only in the church for the most part, learning more about the Bible than anything else. And now I try to live in opposition to that, to say, no, I actually am educated outside of that. And I've done this on my own sort of thing.
So from 8th grade to senior in high school, you were at a Baptist private school?
Little tiny Baptist private school with 30 in my graduating class or somewhere around there.
That's actually pretty big for a little Baptist school.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
We went to the big city, which was a town of about 30,000 people, as opposed to the town that I lived in with 3,000 people.
Yeah.
And so we drove every day. It was like a 45-minute drive to get up to that school every day.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it up hills both ways?
Pretty much in the snow in Northern California, of course. 90 degrees out, but snowing, of course.
So how are those class reunions going?
Funny enough, we have our first one coming up.
No
on
way.
October 4th. Yeah, it's going to be our 20-year class reunion. It's funny because there's really two factions of people that came out of that school, where those that stayed there and never left, and they all have between 4 and 10 kids, and then those that left and found different lives and different paths. So we might clash a little bit when we all get together here on the 4th.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the American story, is that because I left my little small Oklahoma town and live in a metropolis, and it's almost we have the divide of the country right now politically, and and I know it's so stereotypical for the small flyover states, conservatives, typically conservative, whereas the big cities are liberal. And the small towns say that the intellectual elites, but there really is a degree in which it's kind of a split of the country.
Yeah, there's a real irony there too, in that. So if I think about a very heterogeneous small town in Minnesota, for example, that's all white people, all straight people. Well, they might not all be straight, but they all presume to be straight.
Present
to be straight. Even they sometimes, or maybe very often, define themselves in opposition to. So even though there are no intellectual elites, I'm air quoting again, in that town, or there are no Black or Native people in that town, they still often define themselves in opposition to this. I was just reading some research about this, where we say, "Oh, we're not like them." We're not like them, even though we're homogeneous in their little society. There's still a purposeful self-definition of we're in opposition to these groups.
Of othering.
Yeah. Which is a very dangerous thing to do.
Yep. Are you familiar with Ernest Becker's denial of death?
That sounds familiar.
Well, he whenever the horror of being a human and knowing that you're going to die and you could die at any time. It's important. It becomes very important that my life is significant, that it matters, and and so our pressure and our compulsion to find ways in which we're not only good but maybe even superior to others is important, and we're compelled to do that, because to not do that is to sink right back into the realization that I'm meaningless and my life doesn't matter. And so how does it matter? Well, I'm an American. I'm white. Right? Whatever point of pride. I'm an OU football fan.
Well, I mean, this is the existential creed, right? Like, life is meaningless, death is inevitable, we're alone in the universe. And how do we then, we're forced to define ourselves based on these three truths of life, if you will. And
I've never heard that creed before. I fucking
Really?
love that. No.
you should write that down, Marie.
I need to get that like on a wall. That's beautiful.
What's it called?
I don't know if it's official, but I think it's Sartre that wrote it, actually. It's like just the three statements of existentialism.
Okay.
You know, you bring up an interesting point there, Cass, in that something have been learning through the therapeutic process is the ways in which I am driven to succeed, to be certain ways, to, always be invested in learning, how that is a byproduct of me needing to define myself against my religious upbringing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, isn't that what we're doing here, Cass? You and me? Like, this is all a matter of compensating, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I could say that. It just so happens and that it benefits people, and so I feel good about myself for doing this and helping people, but it gives my life meaning. And I think what we've said all along, back when Bob was on the show, he's the one that really kind of introduced the humans are meaning-making, storytelling, pattern-seeking creatures. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we can't just start with that and say, oh, that's bad. No, it's absolutely human. And as a humanist, I'm not going to judge humanity for being that way, because that would disqualify, or at least make me a hypocrite on my humanism.
it's saying no to what is, and what is humanity.
Yeah, and so here we find ourselves, and that, like those 3 points of existentialism, I wanted to say, okay, given all these truths, how now shall we live? And that's a good question. And I think it's a question a lot of people don't make or don't ask, because they really have put their head in the sand regarding those very 3 points.
Yeah. Dude, this is like bad timing, man, because I just wrote my monologue for the episode coming out today, September 15th, which is literally about what we're talking about now. That would have been like the perfect monologue for this episode.
Maybe this will be a good follow-up then.
I mean, I guess, yeah. I just love talking about dying and death, because I think that, I don't know, Joe, you weren't at the table. Joe and I hung out last night with a group of people who are former religious folks.
Not fair.
Yeah, I know. It was super fun, but he wasn't at my
great.
table. But at my table, I was telling everybody about how I'm a life coach and that we're all going to die and life is meaningless. And they're like, you're a life coach?
You're supposed to be a motivational speaker.
No, why would I want to motivate people?
Well, that's what some people think when they hear life coach.
No, see, this is the point I'm getting to that has nothing to do with Joe at all. You just sit there, be quiet, Joe. This is fine. That life is meaningless, and in these attempts for us to find an identity that gives us meaning in the chaos is whatever. Like, it's fine, but I think like a huge step forward that we would all take as humanity is to get comfortable with sitting in the discomfort of despair of what is. Like, just sitting there and be like, holy shit, I am meaningless. And instead of running around and trying to like align yourself to a football team or like whatever it is that you align yourself to find some kind of meaning in life, to just sit with that and be like, yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's probably the biggest comfort of religion, if I can phrase it that way, is to say, if I think of the religious people that I know still, it's that, bad stuff's going to happen in your life, but they always have the frame of this is part of the larger God's plan or whatever, and attached to that is always, oh, this life sucks because of original sin and all that business, but there's the afterlife and it's going to be great. And, I won't have this pain in the afterlife. That's the comfort of it.
Yeah.
But I think we lose something by living in that comfort. We really lose our connection to to this immediate world and our ability to deal with these things instead of just like pushing them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, because like I'm going through that transition right now by virtue of working with Dave, my buddy who's our buddy who's dying and being exposed to death so front and center, and especially someone who's taking it by the horns and just riding with it. I mean, that's what led me to quit my job on Friday. Like ultimately, like because fuck this life. Like life is meaningless. And life is full of pleasure and satisfaction that is also meaningless. But here it is now in this moment. And so what the fuck are we doing with our lives? Like if you can really settle into that despair and that joy, then I think people are going to lead their lives in very different ways. At least that's how it's manifesting for me, that I'm doing things like it's just all absurd. Life is just an absurd, funny joke. And so might as well just kind of like try to do things that make you happy, I guess.
It's totally silly, but I think about this in terms of my dog. Like she's old now. Yeah. We walk real slow. We can only go about a mile. And I think someday I might come home and she'll be gone. Yeah. But when I reflect, and her life is now completely meaningless. It didn't mean anything. But when I reflect on the life that she had, we did the best that we could. Like she lived a good dog life. And I kind of want the same thing for myself and others. Just live a good life.
Yeah. Yeah, and not take ourselves too seriously. I mean, absolutely. The irony here is that by putting one's head in the sand regarding the banality of life and even the chaos of life, we kind of miss out on life. And in the Buddhist tradition, there's a lot of emphasis on how suffering is the means to life, if you will, or to joy. Like by sitting in your suffering, or at least listening to it and letting it be a teacher to you. Not necessarily, like Marie and I talk about on the show a lot, we're not necessarily out to become our quote-unquote best self, but if we can let life and the essential teachings that are going on in our daily lives, with or without our permission, or with anybody's volition or intent, life is coming at us, and it has a way of taking us higher, if you will, or at least to a deeper place of being human and relating to one another. I had a guy on the show a while back who wrote a book called The Last Letter, and his emphasis was that his mother died when he was like 16 in a car accident hit by a drunk driver, and he went into 20 years of running from that pain. And it wasn't until he just looked at it headlong, and a lot of philosophies that are kind of in direct conflict with Christianity and the intent of Christianity. They say suffering is a path. It's a path to life, and it's inevitable.
Yeah, I've just started the therapeutic process in July. I've been seeing a therapist since then, and it's amazing to me the self-revelation that's coming out of that. And one of the things that's coming out of that is that, I mentioned my 20-year reunion's coming up. It's been 20 years that I've been spinning in the same little circle, defining myself in opposition to that upbringing. Being as driven as religious people are to continue their path, but I'm still like as, caged, still as in prison, just in opposition to how I was raised, as opposed to being invested in it, if that makes sense.
No,
yeah,
totally.
It does. Because we're still defining our lives by God, right?
Yeah, and that's one thing that really turned me off from, I don't want to call it the atheist community because there is no such thing, but those really vocal YouTube atheists, they seem to me to be purposefully and needing to be defining themselves as in opposition to religion, which is why I love the name of this podcast. It's not, we atheists against all religion. It's everybody's agnostic, so let's have the conversation about that instead of like needing to be in these oppositional forces, one or the other.
Yeah,
I do think that's a pitfall. Marie, you've probably seen this in your work, is that you can find yourself, identifying and maybe even validating yourself as by what you're against, not what you're for.
Yeah. Like for me, when I think about my work on this show, and especially as I talk to people in my life who are believers still, the way I see it is I'm not in opposition, or I'm not actively opposing Christianity and trying to destroy Christianity or religion or any of those things. The way I define my work is that my passion is to help those heal, Like, I'm in favor
of health.
I am working for helping people with religious trauma and harm to heal.
Right.
That is what I am
Right.
in favor of, and that's how I define my work.
That makes good sense. One thing I'm trying to do, this is going to be a long process that I haven't even started yet, but I really want to go back to the Bible and particularly the New Testament and sort of reinterpret some of the values and things that are in there. For example, this comes out of the therapeutic process as well. We were talking about phrases or mantras that we can return to help interpret and get through certain situations. And the one that came to mind from my religious upbringing was take up your cross and follow me. Mm-hmm. So if I were to apply my interpretive lens, at this point in my life to that, it would mean we all have burdens to bear in this life. So don't shy away from it, invest in it, take it on as your own, and do something about it. And that's a way of reinterpreting the scriptures, because I think there is value to some of those things depending on how we apply an interpretive lens to it.
Sure.
You know what you're doing there, Joe? And I'm not saying this critically, but it's making me laugh.
Yeah.
You're using the Bible as a tarot card.
I have that in my notes right in front of me.
What?
So what tarot makes you do, and I mean, this is probably exactly what you were going to say, it forces you to interpret what you see in front of you, right?
Yeah.
The cards aren't predictive of your future or telling you. They might not even be meaningful, but what they do is make you interpret your life.
Yeah.
They make you think about your life and interpret it through these lenses. Maybe it's the death lens, maybe it's the suffering lens or whatever. Maybe it's the joy lens, but they force you to interpret your life. That's one thing therapy does too. It makes me frame my actions in my life for somebody else, which is it ends up being very different than the way I frame it for myself.
Yeah.
It just gives me a new lens to see the way I act and live in the world.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard of a book called The Gospel of Thomas the Younger?
I don't think so.
Oh, I would highly recommend that. We interviewed the author.
Yeah. It sounds like what you're talking about is spinning the gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, spinning the gospel into something more
redemptive and
human, and something that can render actual helpful moral things that aren't dogmatic and fantastical.
I guess I'm approaching this more as an experiment.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can I get in there to the literature and find something meaningful out of it?
Yeah.
In the same way that I might read Lord of the Rings and, identify with a certain character and their actions and find something meaningful out of that.
But you better stay away from them damn tarot cards, because that's a portal for
Tarot.
That's a portal for the devil, and the devil gets in. It's dangerous.
God damn it, Leroy, get off the line.
Yeah,
I've
Jerry
heard a fair
Dale.
amount of demon possession stories.
Oh, you're Jerry Dale. God damn it, Jerry Dale, hang up.
There to be fair, there could be like 50 different preachers that you sounded right there.
I know, right?
So I'm interested in therapy, and I am such a huge proponent. My life is absolutely 1,000% better because of how much therapy I've subjected myself to. That sounds bad, but I mean But I love the fact that we seem to be, as a culture, coming out of the shaming of like you're crazy if you need to go to a shrink, or some of these derogatory terms.
Right.
And I think life is I don't think it, I know it. Life is hard for everybody, and nobody comes through unscathed. And my kids are going to have therapy because of what I did to them.
It's really it's a process of learning about yourself.
For sure.
It's not a process of, sometimes it's healing, sometimes it's repairing certain things, but it's really a process of learning about yourself. I've made so many discoveries in just these few months about how my upbringing, how I've been living in this circle for 20 years, but never having that frame to put on. I always thought that I was just driven, that I wanted to be accomplished, that I needed to run 9 miles instead of 7. But I have this new lens now where I can see that I'm defining myself in opposition to a lot of other things.
Wow.
And it's not like a healthy way to live for the rest of my life. So
No, it's kind of spiteful.
yeah.
So are you a runner?
I do lots of things. Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know Cass, but Joe and I box together. We haven't in the last few months, but we usually box once or twice a week. And he's a Psychorunner.
Well, he seemed very humble about it.
When we hit, like, I'll always tell Marie, all right, I'm going to do 25 sets. And then I get to 15 and I'm like, God damn it, why did I pick 25? I think I get there eventually.
Yeah, you do. Usually just because you want to like not be like, yeah, you have some kind of internalized like
stubbornness?
No, I think it's like toxic masculinity or something that you think like that you have to overperform, especially identifying as like a man or something.
So, yeah, no, well, it's not, I wouldn't put it that way. I would say this is the framing again process, or learning about myself process, is that my mom and my sister, I was just on a family vacation, so this is fresh in my mind. They are people who complain a lot and whine a lot. And if we need to go up 30 stairs to get to the top of the waterfall, we go up 10, we take a break, we have a snack, water. We go up the next 10, we complain the whole time. And so this is me defining myself in opposition to that, where I need to just push through. I don't care how much pain I'm in or whatever. I just need to push through to be in opposition to that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I like this, to be in opposition, but what we're really saying is I don't want to be like them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, is it so bad? Like, I think the way that we're talking about it makes us think that it's like a dysfunctional response to it. But isn't
Hell
it
no.
that we were raised in a way that we were subjected to the style of a certain kind of person, our parents, our family. We didn't have a choice about the people we surrounded ourselves with, the way that we approached the world. We were told how to approach the world. Some of it stuck. Some of it we agreed with, some of it we didn't. And so when we live a reactionary life or a life in response to that, in opposition to that, I think by just like dismissing it and saying, oh, I'm living this life in opposition to how I was raised and that's not healthy, isn't entirely fair, because you learn something about your values. And so you're living out what is really important to you. You learned what was important to you by being raised by that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree in some respects. I would also just say that I'd also like to have the option not to.
Sure.
I'd like to have the option sometimes to quit at 15 instead of getting to 25.
Yeah.
Because then I'm still being defined by my past, essentially.
Yeah.
If I have the option not to, then I have some freedom.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm in a cage, just a different cage.
Yeah.
And we can think about this too in terms of my revisiting the Bible. Do I need to burn Bibles or street preach against Christianity or whatever? No, that would still be me being defined by all of that.
Yeah.
I want to have the option to maybe revisit the Bible and find some interesting things there.
Yeah.
And we talked about this earlier with I'll use the term again, the atheist community, or those that really vocal atheists, in that I feel like they are still in a cage in some ways because they have to define themselves in opposition to, or always be butting heads with. I'd like the option not to. I want the option just to be quiet sometimes and not care.
Yeah. It's totally legit what you're talking about. And also I want to say that I don't think that, I think that they are, I don't know how they interpret the work that they're doing, but I think that their work is essential.
Yeah.
Like whatever's going on in their mind, I don't really fucking care. But those people, the people who are putting out, like who are debating Christians or like putting out this kind of information, is incredibly helpful. I think it challenges those who have fantastical religious thinking. I think it heals those who came out of it. I think it reinforces those who are doubting, and it helps them move forward. So like it has real results. And I think it's essential, the work that they're doing, but I can also see what you're saying, that perhaps they're playing out some kind of weird thing.
I don't mean to sound super negative about that. I do think it's important as well. I just like to maintain a space in which we're not just two rams butting heads, but we're actually having a real conversation.
Yeah.
I was using YouTube as an example because that's one person talking, right?
True.
In a debate space, in a conversational space, I think it's fantastic. There's some podcast episodes that I've listened to where people are on opposing sides, but they have a 2-hour conversation.
Yeah.
And they can find commonality and common interest and meaning between the two of them. And I think that's fantastic. I just try to avoid that Democrat-Republican space where all we do is fight each other and fight.
Right, or just like the monologue where, somebody's making this video just ripping someone to shreds. It's just like internet comments in video format.
Yeah.
It's just...
Let's have it. Let's move away from the Twitter wars and have a conversation like we're having today.
Please.
Yeah. I like the distinction you're drawing there, yeah.
And we love to figure out ways to give ourselves a break, to cut ourselves some slack. And we quote this a lot, and especially in Dave Warnock's campaign, Maya Angelou, do your best, or do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And she puts everything so simply. And that's, I think what you're saying, Joe, is that, if I lived in opposition for a long time, now I've kind of evolved to the point where I see that as in a cage or going in a circle, and I want out. I want an option.
Yeah.
I want to do something different, and both are okay. And even when we look at say angry atheists or whatever, and we see that they're on a mission to live in opposition to something, we can just gently say to ourselves, "Oh, I remember when I was, I remember my first beer." And just cut them some slack as far as, that's just where they're... And going back to what you said, Marie, when it comes to, so Joe sees how his mom complains all the way up the stairs, and he realizes, I really don't like how that presents, and I want to be sure and not complain the next time that I'm tired of steps or any other thing I'm tired of. And so, absolutely, from the day we're born, we begin collecting data. We put things in our mouths as babies to figure out what they taste like or what this is. We're just constantly taking in data and deciding what we like and dislike. That's almost the definition of being human. It can be no other way. So when we find something or see something that we don't like, and we say, no, I would like to mitigate that out of my life, and we see something or someone that we do like, and we begin to emulate that. And everybody's doing the best they can. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here. We all three know this, but I think it's good for people to hear this. Like, oh my gosh, I have, and this is very problematic with Christianity, especially, is I have lived my life thinking that the stakes were high, and I got to get this right, and I'm in competition with my peers, and for whatever, for beauty, for wisdom, for education, for athleticism, whatever, and just and if you get to the, like I said with Christianity, heaven and hell hang in the balance, and so this slack and this comedy almost, and this artful view of life, is that it's a mess, it's chaos, everybody's doing the best they can, and we're making it up as we go. And it's fucking ugly and painful, and it's beautiful and delightful and full of laughter and joy and full of tears and heartbreak.
Yeah, it's something you just said there, Cass. It reminds me of something I've been thinking about for the past couple of weeks, is that Christianity tends to live in a black and white space when the world and life is really gray. Black, it's always wrong, it's always sin, it's bad. White, it's great, it's holy, you're going to heaven, that kind of deal. Yeah. When life is a mixed bag of a lot of, everything's gray, and we're forced to interpret things in that gray space.
Have either of you ever heard Malcolm X's teaching on black and white?
No.
Well, when he was in prison, he was for his activism and such, and there was a black man in the prison who kind of became his mentor, and he said he had him open up a dictionary, and he said, read the definition of white and read the definition of black, and the culture in itself had defined one as good and one as bad. And anyway, I mean, it's the water we're swimming in, but it's just interesting. So let's go back. So you graduate from a Baptist high school. Do you go straight into college?
I go to junior college, which that should qualify. Yeah. Did
you move out of the house?
I stayed in the house for 1 year, and then I moved out in the second year.
So when did your faith, and maybe before I go to your faith being challenged, So were you kind of vicariously a Christian because it was the thing to do in your culture, or did you really take Jesus into your heart and love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength? We got to find out if you were a real Christian.
We do.
Definitely the latter. So during my homeschool years, I only remember being involved in like Awana, if you know what that is. And,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other like homeschool activities, which were through various churches. It was in 8th grade where, you know, being homeschooled, you're kind of socially inept a little bit, just to be completely honest. And
Sure.
when I reached 8th grade, I was thrust into this highly social environment in which I didn't know how to interact. And so the way to gain status in that group was to invest in the religion. That was the main way.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as you hinted at earlier, like a facade, or like I was putting on the religion as a coat or something. You know, we really went headfirst into it. Yeah. So much that by the time my senior year came around, I was running chapel services at the school. Yep. I was essentially the 12th grade preacher at the school.
Yep.
What? Joe,
I didn't preach
known
every
you
time.
For years. What the?
This never came up. We just usually talk about my anger issues and other things.
Well, yeah, we're usually hitting things when we hang out.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't speaking every time. I spoke once or twice, but there was more of I was organizing speakers and introducing them and saying the prayer at the beginning and the end and that kind of deal.
Yeah,
so yeah, we were really headfirst into it because that's all we knew. We didn't know anything else, so that's what we did.
Well, and it might have been just like, you know, every culture kind of has its measuring stick of how good a bowler are you. If you have a circle of friends, you know, that's going to put you on the strata. And so maybe it was like, well, he's, you know, we used to have these terms. I'm sure you both relate to this. And as younger people, we describe somebody as, man, they're super Christian, or they're really devout, or, you know, it was a measuring stick of super strong. That was a word. Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. And then, so did you have any, girlfriends in that environment, and was any kind of purity culture involved?
We had, I can remember a couple things where a couple people girlfriend and boyfriend up, but that was kind of frowned upon and super rare. I had someone I liked. Nothing really happened there. We kind of coupled up, kind of didn't. I don't know. There's a lot of gray area there because you weren't allowed to do anything together or by yourself or on your own because it was so conservative. So no, nothing really happened there. It wasn't until after
trauma.
I got out.
Like, it's not something that I don't know. So a lot of us entered into post-Christianity with some sexual healing in store.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair.
So in college, according to your bio, that's kind of when things began to rattle for you. Talk about that.
Yeah, you know, going from being so isolated as a farm kid, homeschooled, to being so isolated as going to Baptist school, I didn't know there was another world out there. And everything contained in that small building of our junior and our high school made perfect sense to me while you're in it. You know, if only everyone was a Christian, the world would be a great place. Yep. So we need to go out and spread the word. We need to make sure everyone's, you know, obeying the laws and you know, being the best Christian they can be.
Because we have the truth and they're in a lie.
Yeah, they're delusional and everything's horrible outside of these four walls. But then I went to junior college and I was athletic. I played at the highest level soccer you can in California. But that really didn't expose me to too much, though. It was just more about the sport. When I went to junior college, though, I played soccer there and discovered there's a whole new world out there.
Sure.
Like girls, you know, they look different not wearing long skirts and long hair. And that's kind of desirable, you know? And these people go out and they party and they look like they have a good time. And that's, you know, it's a very social environment. It's not like this hellhole of people just heading straight to hell.
They seem happy.
Yeah. They can get up the next day and they do whatever they need to do. And they talk about the crazy thing that happened. And they're not just, you know, worshiping Satan at these parties. There's other things that are happening that are kind of cool and fun.
There's other things in addition to worshiping Satan?
Right, of course. But no, it's an exposure thing, which I think we all need in some ways. But I was immediately thrust into it. I think the athletic part of it was important because you're on a team, so you're in a group and you're in that social environment. So I learned a new way of being socially instead of just being social in the church, which is all I knew previously.
I had a kid in my high school experience. He was 2 years older than me, and we went to church together at the Presbyterian church, and as kids. And the town I lived in was 2,500 population, and one stoplight town, no Walmarts, there's just all mom and pop stores, grocery stores, and restaurants, and just a few of those. And it was almost entirely agricultural. We were 100 miles from any metropolis, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Wichita. And so everybody were farmers, pretty much. This kid was a sweetheart. He was just a great kid. He's kind of quiet. And, I'm sure he had a mental illness that nobody knew about. But he went to college from that environment. And within the first week or two of his freshman year of living on campus in a dorm about an hour away from home, he got in his truck and he went on a drive, and it was almost like Forrest Gump. He was running, and he drove and drove and drove until his car ran out of gas on the side of the road, and the police found him, and he was catatonic, or not catatonic, but he was just, deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
Did you just go into a fugue dissociative state?
And he never, ever came out of it.
Wow.
To this day, he is kind of a vegetable.
Shit.
And that was, 35 years ago. So I say all that to say that, the real world can be horrifyingly shocking.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're not prepared for it. And when Christianity, and especially a sheltered environment, and as well-meaning as parents and those people are to keep us in a bubble, it is no thank you. It is not helpful.
Yeah, and the hardest part of that, the transition from high school to junior college, was that I lost everyone that I loved and cared about. Like, everyone rejected me because I was no longer in conformity to what was required to be a part of that group. And so that was the hardest thing of it all.
How did they hear about it?
It's a small town. Word gets around. I'm no longer wearing Jesus t-shirts.
And he doesn't go to church anymore, or he doesn't believe anymore, or do you know what they were saying?
Yeah, all those things.
Okay.
All those things. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a slow process, but it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, we relate. We have all lost friends and
yeah,
tough stuff. So I guess, how did you redefine yourself or reinvent your own worldview?
I think initially it was just confusion, not knowing what to do. And then it was, I'm going to study philosophy in my 4-year degree, and I'm going to learn all the arguments of why what I learned is incorrect. So that's a very, truth approach.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I went to junior college for 3 years there, and then I kind of ran away to Humboldt State. It's out on the California coast up in Northern California. It's just as a way of removing myself from what I recognize as a toxic environment, and continued to study philosophy to find all the reasons why how I grew up was wrong, or what I learned was wrong. And that was a long process, but it was, in a sense, just as isolating in the way I grew up, because I was still defining myself in opposition to that group that rejected me, and not finding new community in where I lived, if that makes sense. I was trying to find all the reasons and the answers, as opposed to actually going through the journey and the process, which is a different thing.
So did you say that you were kind of a recluse, or to yourself?
Yeah, I didn't really have many friends. I had people that I worked with. I had people that I knew from class, but I didn't really hang out socially that much. I didn't know how to, in one respect. And secondly, I was still busy defining myself in opposition to the group that rejected me.
Mm-hmm.
So in both the junior college and in wherever else you went, did you live in a dorm and have a roommate or apartment?
I lived in an apartment for junior college for 2 years out of those 3 years after I decided to leave home.
With a roommate?
Then, yeah. With
Okay.
a roommate. And he was a pothead, so I became a pothead for a while. I guess I'm admitting that on the internet now.
You're just Joe.
I know. Yeah, that's fair. I became sort of a pothead. Once again, like wanting to expand my learning, but also to be, well, they don't do this, so I'm going to do this. You know,
See. Yeah, there's some of that opposition.
just to be in opposition to. And then when I went to Humboldt State, which is part of the golden triangle of marijuana in California, I quit smoking, ironically. But that was more about I was just busy with school and trying to be successful.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most central themes on this podcast for 5 years is agency and personal autonomy.
Yeah.
And getting that back from Jesus, where, those of us that were devout, we literally became less so that he could become more. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. Take no thought of the morrow. There's all kinds of ways in which we were asked to kind of lobotomize our individuation. And so getting that back is a big deal, and one of the main tasks in order to get some kind of emotional health. And so what I hear, and just to say it out loud is kind of stating the obvious, but living in opposition, you still aren't the one calling the shots.
Yeah.
Correct.
You're living
You're still
in
not free.
Yeah, you're still not free.
reactive.
Yeah. So I can see where that would, be part of what you noticed, and you made some changes. So
Part of that too was like the reality of hell was still there. I don't know if others have this same experience, but
some do. Yeah.
yeah, like even when I didn't believe anymore, I still thought like I'm probably going to hell.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there was that continued fear, but then it was more of, and speaking of living in opposition to it, just like, I'm just going to embrace it then.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do whatever I want to in life. Screw it. Fine. I'm going to hell. Whatever.
Yeah. Whatever it takes. I mean, there's a lot of people, everybody's effect of hell. I did not ever really get hell shoved down my throat. And so it's never been something that I took seriously, I think, even subconsciously. But I have a friend as a grown man, and he's an Afghan war veteran. He's a tough guy. He's like black belt Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, tough guy, tattooed up and down. He's just badass. And he has panic attacks about the thought of like, I've really fucked up. I've left the Lord and I'm hellbound. And it rattles him, and it's a real thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like a sub-trauma under the religious trauma syndrome that, what's her name? Dr. Marlene Weinell developed.
Well, that's sort of the apex of not being a group member anymore. It's not just, I'm not a part of this group. It's not just, I don't hold the values that you have. It's that not only are you rejected by this group and not a part of this group, but you're eternally damned because you're not a part of this group.
Yeah.
The extra layer on there,
That's part of the high stakes I was talking about.
Right.
Yeah. And we learn that so young that it just gets imprinted in our brains in some ways.
For sure.
It's hard to undo.
Yeah.
So you ended up getting a master's in results measurement?
Oh, well, that's my title. I got a master's in sociology.
Oh, okay.
Simply because sociology, you can kind of study anything you want to, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, so I went into sociology.
So that's what you do for a living?
Yeah, I work, I sort of data analyst, evaluator, capacity builder, data scientist, a number of things.
So give me an example of what a day in the life of. I mean, what is it you work on?
Particularly Wednesdays.
Wednesdays. I play around on Facebook and YouTube, and I wait to go boxing with Marie at 4 p.m. General day on a Wednesday.
I was really not talking about your day off.
On a Tuesday, however, my job's such a mixed bag, but let me just describe kind of what I do as an example that might help. So the state might give a bunch of money, or the legislator give a bunch of money to a program, or someone might a foundation might start a program, run a program that's designed to help young learners in reading skills, for example.
Sure.
And so it's my responsibility to find a way to track or measure what they're doing in terms of implementing the program, design some measures of quality, so whether or not they're doing it well, and then provide some outcome measures as well, whether they're achieving what they want to achieve. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of that's the results measurement specialist part of it, where I'm from beginning to end of the program, I'm showing funders and other interested parties that we're doing something well and we're achieving some certain outcomes.
It's effective.
Yeah, which is a difficult task in education because it's so messy and so many things are happening. But that's my responsibility.
Oh, that does sound hard. Even in that example, sitting down with a child and saying, "Can you read better than you could a year ago?" That's that's truth. That's truth finding. I mean, that's kind of up your alley.
Yeah, evidence building sort of thing. Yeah. Can we provide enough evidence to say whether this is effective or not? And please fund us again in the future.
Well, we kind of know what you do for fun when it comes to, maybe not fun, but just personal hobbies and goals, and as far as your physical fitness and beating up Marie. And...
we should really clarify that.
Yeah. I have a lot of anger. You're also a huge nerd.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like.
Well, like you like the super nerdy culture stuff. I've seen your house.
Yeah, and you've seen T-shirts that I wear and other things.
Yeah.
Like?
It's on display. There's lots of Star Wars in my house.
Okay. Figurines?
A number of things. Yeah.
Bobbleheads.
Very obvious posters hanging around.
So are you engaged romantically at all?
No. Just throwing it out there. Everybody who's listening, currently single. He
lives in Minnesota.
Twin Cities area in Minnesota. Yep. Mm-hmm. Full-time job, good credit score.
Yep.
But never married?
No, and yes, married once.
Okay.
This goes back to my leaving junior college, going to regular college. So I did have a girlfriend in junior college I think we were together for like a year. And then we went to 4-year school out on the coastline. So this is about a 3-hour drive from home. And so we lived in the dorms for a semester, but I think we both really hated it just because it was like too loud and annoying. And, I was already 2 years into my degree, so I was matured past that 18 and 19-year-old phase. And so we were going to get our own place, but there was the idea that there was the obvious fact that I would have to hear about how I'm living in sin from my parents every time I talked to them. And probably more often than that, I'd get letters and things. We were sure that would happen. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'd quite be disowned, but I would definitely take shit for a long period of time. And at this point in my evolution, I had come to, instead of always butting heads with my mom or needing to show that she's wrong or getting her to admit that it's just based on faith or whatever, I was at a point where I was like, how can I make this easiest for me?
Yep.
The least amount of crap that I take as possible. And one of the ways to do that was to get married when we decided to move out and get our own place. Wow. We never went into it, though, like, this is for the rest of our lives and let's have a family together. It was more like, it was mostly just, I don't want to hear about this from my mom every time I talk to her.
And yet I want to move in with you.
Yeah, that is literally the first time I've ever heard of that being a reason for getting married. Like, I'm not judging. I'm just, like, so surprised with the honesty of it.
Yeah. Well, there was another reason, too, which is that in California, if we got married, we looked really poor, so they paid for part of our education. Yeah. But the main motivating factor was to not hear about it from my mom every time that I talked to her.
So how did the separation end up going down? Very amicably, I assume?
Yeah, it was totally fine. We moved to Texas, and this is just, I was essentially running away from home when I moved to Texas. I was ready to go anywhere else that didn't have the imprint of my life in California. And so we just went to Texas. It was cheap to live. There was lots of opportunity. And then, once we moved there, we were like, our lives are really going different directions. Let's just take our different paths and go forward from there. It was pretty easy. We didn't have any stuff, so that's really easy to do when you're married, to split like that.
So do you have any tattoos?
No, I do not. I've been thinking about it, though. I kick around the idea of getting a Yoda somewhere in my body every now and again.
So what's one of the strangest truths about, you know that game, One Truth and Two Lies? And like what?
I do not know that one.
Well, but it's like you try to cloak, I was born in England or something, or something that would make you rare at a party. Is there anything about you that kind of is unique? How about double jointed thumbs or anything?
My shoulder's kind of that way. I can pop it in and out of place.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Ugh.
My right shoulder, I can pop it out and pop
I
it back in.
want to see that. Oh.
It looks gross.
And it doesn't hurt when you do that.
No, not at all.
That's
Just
crazy.
do it.
Why is that? Were you born that way or did you have an accident?
As far as I can remember, it's been that way.
You're a freak.
Interesting fact. Here's one thing. I have hurt myself running with sharp sticks, playing with knives, and fire. So everything you're told not to do as a kid, I've injured myself doing. I stabbed myself in the foot with a butter knife because I was throwing it into the ground. Ended up with several stitches there. I was running with a sharp stick, fell. It hit me in the stomach and made me tumble over, fell on my shoulder and broke my clavicle bone. Oof. And then I've burned my eyebrows off and stuff with fire, lit my hair on fire. We were farm kids. We were exposed to chainsaws at a very young age and gasoline.
And you're also into some amount of woodworking.
Oh yeah, currently I'm trying to build as much of my own furniture as I can.
Yeah. And you built your own patio thingy.
I did do a walkway in the backyard and a fire pit and a patio. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's do, what's something you're most proud of?
Building my career, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm known in the community now and people come to me. I get job offers sometimes.
What city is this now?
Part of that. I live in St. Paul, but I work Roseville, Minneapolis area.
Okay.
I think the other thing too, can I do two?
Yeah.
The other thing too would be growing up uneducated and knowing more about the Bible than I did about mathematics, to be able to, and this kind of tags along with building my career, but to be able to become educated and build a life and a career based on that.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well played, sir.
Dude, I will see you September 25th.
Okay.
We're going to start boxing.
Is that our
again.
next thing? All right.
Yep. And we'll have some other friends that are going to come and we're going to beat them up.
Let's do it. We haven't done the thing at my place for a long time.
No, we haven't. And then the next time the cast comes to town, you guys will need to meet, and I will bring my extra set of boxing gloves, and we will teach Cass how to...
Sounds like toxic masculinity.
How is it toxic? There's no toxic part here.
I'm just playing with you. I don't even know
this
what that means.
This is hella cathartic. That's how you know you're toxic, Cass.
Yeah, blind spot, and I'm liking it that way.
Yeah.
Joe, has Marie ever printed off a life-size picture of my face, cut it out round, and put it on your face, and then boxed you?
No, but we've discussed doing that with other individuals.
Okay. Let's role play. That could be therapeutic.
It is. Yeah.
No,
the
seriously.
Thing is, though, you don't want to hit while you're angry. I mean, I know we do sometimes, but you want to be
every time.
No, you want to be controlled, and you want to practice proper form. Well, I tell you this, and not necessarily that you do it, but
Zen master.
If you're angry, you're just going to be expending extra energy.
Yes.
You want to be controlled, breathing properly, proper form. Just to practice not being out of control. It should be a really controlled environment.
Like if you're legit fighting and actually your goal is to actually become a better fighter, but my goal is to hit you and to feel better about myself.
And that's when you bring your guard down when you're punching, and
that's fine.
You swing out when you're doing a hook or whatever.
That's fine. Okay. I just want to hit.
Fair enough.
I don't care.
I'm just saying anger leads itself to improper form much easier.
That's fair. That is accurate. I'll give you that. Yeah.
Well, I would call this...
But it feels good.
I'd call this a good conversation, Joe. I really appreciate you coming on, and I do look forward to meeting you face-to-face sometime when I'm up there.
Sounds good. And Maria, I want to be involved with that, the group that I was with last night.
The former fundamentalists of the Twin Cities?
They're a really fun group. They're a very diverse group.
Not your typical atheist group.
No, not at all. I wasn't sure what to expect. A bunch of
Yeah.
anger and bashing on religion. But we all have that common thread. But then we're so diverse in our lives, and it was just a lot of fun.
Good. I'm glad you had a good time.
Well, have a good the rest of your Sunday.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man.
So Joe, no last name, friend of Marie, boxer.
Yeah.
Another success story, overcoming.
Yeah.
Just you come out of a hole of lack of education, sheltered. You hit the world, and this is a testimony to his resilience
Yeah.
and the human desire to I gotta up my game if I'm gonna keep up with this world or something,
Nah, fuck that competition. But yeah, he's a really steady, stable guy. Like I've never, and it shows in his interview that he's not super reactive. He's very thoughtful, especially, and it shows in the work that he does with the data analytics and, always leaning on evidence and data to back you up and having a well thought through, opinion about things or results about things. And yeah, that's Joe. And then he also hit stuff. So,
And you met at the gym?
Actually, I don't know that I have consent to share about how we met. So I don't know if I can disclose that.
Okay. Yeah, but it's interesting that you got to meet him. And I guess what I meant as far as the world will chew you up and spit you out if you don't up your game, and not in a competitive sense necessarily, but just he figured out that, I'm not as educated as my peers, and I find myself in a world that education is going to be a key for me to maybe own a home. I don't know. I mean, whatever his goals were, which I meant to ask him if he owned a home. Do you know? If
he does. Yeah.
Yeah, he seems like it. I mean, he seems like the type that
be responsible enough to get there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, he's got this. He's got a nice house. The neighborhood is nicer than his actual house. But yeah, and then he one thing he didn't bring up is that he does a lot of hiking and camping. Like he'll take his dog and they'll just fucking drive out to, I don't know where he goes, like all across the country and just hikes by himself. And so in a way, he's kind of a recluse. He's kind of introverted.
Man, sometimes it is just a fantasy for me to look at people and go, if not for the curse of God, there go I.
Yeah.
In that, and in college, I started to question my faith pretty damn hard. And I could feel myself like I'm losing my faith. And for whatever reason, and I could probably come up with several, the rest is history, I doubled down. But here's a guy who his faith was rattled in college, and he acted on it. I mean, he listened to those doubts and went with his gut and the facts and truth and such. And if I'd be a homeowner by now. I mean, and I'm like 15 years older than him, or at least 10.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how old he said he was, actually.
He's 38.
Okay, well, I'm 53, so was that 15? So the only thing that I kind of wrote down as a note that anytime that I can zero in on a micro level of what's wrong with Christianity, because there's so many, and you can't broad brush it as well as find that specific, and that is, and I don't think it didn't sound like, I don't know. I mean, all breakups are a little painful, but the pressure to marry that was completely external. I mean, like that's the culture pressuring them to do something, and they're gonna. They had some benefits of it, financially, but overall it was like, this is what is expected of us. And so we're going to do this, and, probably more than not complicated their life. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it sounded like, especially since they knew
they went
that
in.
like they didn't do it, like they didn't internalize that expectation, that in a way they did, and in a way they didn't, they chose to do it despite that they didn't actually want to do it.
Well, and they weren't under any delusion that this is life, till death do us part.
Right.
How fucking brilliant!
That's
God
healthy.
damn
yeah.
it!
I know.
There again, if not for the curse of God, there go I. I mean, I just think there's so much pain I could have avoided by being that trusting of my own
I know.
critical thinking.
Yeah, no, I feel you. One of the things I was kind of laughing about is he's just like, he's so like composed that like when he didn't say he was going to therapy. He said he's going through the therapeutic process. I don't know. He amuses me like by how like, he's kind of intellectual, like an intellectual.
Wait a second. He's not real.
He's not real?
He is a clone created by the government.
Okay. Okay.
He's not real. He's not a real human being. He's way too together. Oh, Joe, we expose you right now in the name of...
We wash you with the blood of Christ. Get out of here, Satan.
No, man, he really is like, he is a perfect guy. And
I know him better than that. He's not.
Oh, okay. So he's very human.
Yeah, just like everyone else. Yeah.
Okay. So he's not a machine, robot.
Definitely not. No.
Good
but he likes to, I think he likes to present himself as kind of well put together and like manicured and like well thought through.
Is he handsome?
Yeah, he's a good looking guy.
Wow, he must work hard to stay single. He's financially independent. He's level headed. He seems to be very sensitive.
Yeah.
He's what the heck?
Bitches
How's he
like
fighting
him.
him off?
I don't know. I just don't know that. I don't know. We've never really talked about that a whole lot, but he gets into relationships, but like long term, they don't seem to pan out. Like, I don't think he wants kids. And a lot of the
That's
women.
a deal breaker for some.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know much more than that, but he seems kind of happy being on his own, but I could be wrong about that. We haven't talked about it.
You know, if I were to do it all again, I would not marry. I would have my own place. She would have hers.
Yep.
And that's the way we would go to the grave. I mean, like, there's just separate lives.
Yeah.
And more than friends with benefits. I mean, it you know, but just something to where just miles away from the codependency I've lived my whole life.
Yep. Yep.
And we're working on that ourselves. I mean, like, Mindy and I are working on, like, okay, how now shall we live now that we've realized how fucked up we were. Right. And I got to say, just at so as recent as last night, and of course this taping is going to be months from now or weeks, but last night was absolutely magical. And I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about, okay, so what I've always known is that, or not known, but this is kind of a measuring stick that I've established, is that one way that I know I really, really like a person and I really, really enjoy their company is that time flies when I'm with them. So it might manifest like this, that you look down at the clock at one point and it's 12:05, and within a few minutes, at least to you look down again and it's 1:15. And that, you know, you have just entered the twilight zone of a real friendship and of a real relationship where connection is real. And we have lacked that. I mean, it's hard to be married for 31 years and for you to have really anything exciting to say to each other.
Yeah.
Because of just how much you just know and you share life. And last night we sat out and talked for over 2 hours. And I did not even know that was physically possible at this point.
That's lovely.
I came away completely head over heels attracted to her. And honestly, I came away just going, oh, fuck. And in a way, you know, when we were going through our hardship, and I was like, there's no way that we need to be together. This is ridiculous. And but I'm not going to abandon her in menopause. I'm just going to wait around because I'm not in any hurry. I'm just going to wait around until she realizes we're incompatible. And last night was one of those moments where I was like, oh shit, there might be something here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really cool.
That's awesome.
And we're starting to meet in that place of, you know, like we divorced from that old thing and it's like we're almost reacquainting.
Yeah.
I could not believe. I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, who are you and what have you done with my life? Because I don't want her back. I want this.
Yeah.
And she shared what she ended up sharing is her passion for her degree and what she wants to do with her degree. And I was like, shit.
Wow.
So there's nothing more exciting to me right now than making a shit ton of money so she can quit her job and pursue her life.
That is so sweet. Oh my God. That's fucking beautiful.
And I don't give a shit about this podcast anymore. I've lost it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything has shifted to her.
Yeah.
And it's organic. Like, it's not because she threw down a gauntlet, which she did 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's just now become I've adopted it as this is what I want. This is what's going to give my life real meaning right now, is for me to
empower her to grow and to heal and to become what she wants to be.
Yeah.
Because you already went through that. And
I've lived that my whole life.
Yeah.
I've always done everything I've wanted to do because I'm fearless.
Yeah.
And I have the opposite syndrome of my wife.
Right. You guys were raised differently.
My parents absolutely believed in me.
Yeah.
And nobody abandoned me.
Yeah.
And I've got a full gas tank of confidence, you know.
Right.
And I think that's what attracted her to me at first.
Yeah.
But after a while, when she, you know, I mean, we can analyze all that, but it's just been really good.
That's so awesome.
So let's do some kind of formal closure to this, and on the Joe talk, you know.
On the Joe talk. Well, I was just going to look through my notes. One thing that I really liked in the conversation was just the part where we were kind of hinting at just nodding at the people in our lives who are at different points in their journeys.
Yeah.
Just looking at them.
Recognizing it.
Yeah. It's just this validation of like, you are where you need to be. I don't need you to be. I don't expect you to be here or there. I don't have any expectations for you. I see you where you are, and I say yes to where you are on your journey. And that made me think of something that happened last night at the very party that Joe and I were at with a bunch of former fundamentalist religious people in the Twin Cities. There was one new guy there, and we were all trying to make a list of different things that we could do in the future for these events, just like social events. And so people were having fun with it. And one person had suggested that we should do a sex toy party. And I was like, I mean,
a white elephant or something?
No,
like
not
exchange,
even. No, there's like people that you can, like, you know, Tupperware parties. They do the same exact structure, but for sex toys. But
bring in a salesman.
Yeah, but it's usually very heterocentric and like has an underlining of like misogyny. It's really generally gross, but I'm pretty sure there's other forms of it too. But point being,
like
though,
a bachelorette shower.
Basically, yeah. So they were like, oh, we should do a sex toy party. And this one guy was there and he's like, I don't even know like what there is. And we were just starting to joke about like dildos and Benoit balls and like all sorts of sex toys. And he's like, I don't even what. Should I even ask? I'm like, you can ask. He's like, oh, but I'm not interested in any of that stuff. I'm like, oh, that's okay. I'm like, you don't need to be interested. You can still ask. We'll tell you. He's like, oh, I'm just not interested at all, actually. And then my friend says to him, oh, you just haven't found the right sex toy yet. And the guy goes, no, I'm really just not interested. And my friend kept pushing and she's like, no, it's just, you need the right one and then you'll be happy or whatever like that. And I said to her, I was like, he's already said that he's just fine where he is and you need to back off because he said he's okay. And the guy goes to me, he's like, thank you. I'm like, you're welcome. And inside of me, I'm like, I see myself in him from 10 years ago where I didn't, maybe 10 plus years ago, when I didn't even know like what an orgasm was, for example. And I thought that like any amount of sex toy or non-missionary sex that you did in your bedroom was a form of depravity or something. It shows that you're broken in some way. And so when he said that, like maybe I projected, I don't know what's behind what he said. And I don't really fucking care. Like he is where he is. He expressed that he's comfortable where he is. And I just was able to nod and be like, I see you. I see you where you are in your journey. I'm in a different place. I don't know where you're going to go. I don't know if you're ever going to touch a dildo in your entire life or be able to identify what a Ben Wall ball is. I don't really fucking care. But the freedom to just not have to project my expectations or my journey on someone else and just nod and to validate where someone else is at and not pressure them and put my shit on them and my expectations on them.
Yep.
Because that's the last thing I want people to be doing to me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that other girl was projecting as well, is because she maybe in her life she had an experience where she thought she was content until she discovered one, and now I'm into sex toys.
She did, yeah.
That was her experience, and so she's just going to project onto him, oh, you just haven't had the right one.
That's right.
And well-meaning, obviously. I mean, maybe.
But the first time he pushed back, that's when you should back off.
That's it. Yeah, I think the first time you say it, as far as, I bet you would like this. No, I'm good. I'm okay. That's it. That's the end of discussion. I mean, that's boundaries.
Yeah.
And when we're nodding, like the term you use, and we're acknowledging, yep, there it is. I see you. Mm-hmm. I'm not superior to you. And I think this is where you're right in your pushback against me using measurable terms and hierarchical terms like maturation or whatever.
Yeah.
Because there is this sense that, well, let me just say this. What I was going to say was there's this sense that I'm further down the road than that person.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's what that girl was kind of feeling. It's like, I'm further down the road. I'm going to turn around and yell back at you, hey, the bridge is fixed. Come on in. Or, like the water's fine. I'm further down. I'm yelling back. I'm telling you that you will like this once you try it. And so there's a sense of I'm further down the road.
But meanwhile, he's still looking for the machete to cut through the forest. So he can't even think about the fucking bridge and the fact that it used to be broken and now it's fixed and here's how to get there.
Well, but even that, yes, I agree fully. He could be looking for the machete or he could not. He could be literally fine with, he's built a cabin on the road right there. He has no desire to even go further down the road.
Yeah,
he could go the rest of his fucking life without sex toys.
Right.
But, the sense of, let's not put a grade on these students' papers, A, B, C, D, F, or whatever, because they might feel bad about themselves. That thing, that argument.
Yeah.
When you want to kind of say, hey, let's not use measurable language or hierarchical language or gradation.
For a human.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that means that we give an elephant score to people or a kangaroo score to people. I don't think that means that you take away all forms of measurement of performance or illustration of integrating knowledge and being able to think critically. Mm-hmm. Is that where you're going?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just curious because it just starts to smack of are we protecting people from their emotions?
No. The real problem is thinking that your ability to perform back knowledge or to perform back assimilation of knowledge reflects on your value. Okay. That's the problem.
Okay. So getting up in front of people and saying, I am more mature than I was before this session. What I learned in this session has really changed my life. And I just want to shout it out loud and to my friends so that that you'll celebrate with me this progress. How's that?
Yeah. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah. So I'm able to say, I feel better about myself. I feel like I'm healthier for having done this workshop or whatever, or read this book or whatever.
Yeah. It's all about relating to people, right? On most internet forums where you're talking about mental health, or really on our the private group, usually there's a lot of rules or guidelines about, people when they're talking about their shit or explicitly asking for, feedback. Usually the language you want to encourage people to approach dialoguing about that is to relate, to not tell people what to do.
To use I statements.
Right. So whenever someone writes something and I feel like I have maybe some knowledge around this topic, I'll say something like, I don't know where your path is leading you, but I'll tell you that from my experience, this is where I ended up going. This is what ended up helping. I don't know. I don't know if that'll do it for you.
Yeah, and that kind of it goes around terms that it might infer that I'm better than you because I've done this,
or that I know what you should do,
or preachy or prescriptive. Yeah.
Right. And I want to believe that people have the ability to take in input from around them, like to hear the experiences that I've gone through. They have the ability to listen to what I have gone through and what I think is helpful for me, and to integrate that into what they know about themselves and to decide whether or not they think that that's relevant to who they are, where they want to go. I don't fucking know them. Why the fuck would I give them advice?
Yeah.
You know, I trust their ability, you know?
And I like this so much better than, because if I thought that we were trying to change our language to protect people from their emotions, I don't get excited about that. But
I know you don't. Yeah.
But I do get excited about choosing language that communicates the closest to the truth, the most accurate, the most sound way of presenting this information. And in so doing, it protects me from sounding like a dick, for one thing, and it protects, from this being more easily misunderstood, misconstrued, or whatever. So I'm all about more and more clear communication, better communication, and more accurately representing what's really happening in the facts and in the truth. And I can buy in to changing my language to be a better communicator.
Well, it's more effective,
It's more effective, and it's closer to the truth. Yeah. And the byproduct is it helps prevent misunderstandings and hurt feelings.
True. I think my favorite thing about it is that it acknowledges someone's autonomy and their self-knowledge. Like that's what really drives me to change the way I communicate things.
Man, you are such a changed creature from the woman I interviewed, 3 years ago? Originally?
Episode 108? Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. I love her, though.
Oh, yeah. Bless her heart, right?
Yeah. I know what you people mean by that.
Yeah. That's what Josh said, right?
Yeah.
A few weeks heart. Back. It means fuck you.
Yeah. No, I love her. She got me here.
Well, thanks for finding Joe. I thought he was good, and I think people could... I know I'm like, okay, I have a new role model.
Yeah. He's kind of funny. Like, he always surprises me because mostly we just hang out and box and don't talk about anything profound at all. And I always have just kind of taken him for a meathead, like a jock. But like the few times we've hung out socially, like he really does surprise me. He's got the very philosophical mind. He's quite the intellectual, very, well measured. He's not a meathead at all.
No, he's kind of a polymath.
Yeah.
A Renaissance, whatever, to where he's both jock and nerd. He's Star Wars and a boxer, or whatever.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's got it.
God, I want to fuck you.
Good luck. I don't know if she's into that. Keep that in the show, please.
All right, well, I guess we'll talk again. Most likely.
Yes. I will see you on Friday.
Oh, wow. That's coming up so soon. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, fantastic.
I'll pick you up at the airport. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
I'll give you a big hug.
Yeah. We'll get smashed. It'll be good.
We're going to tie one on?
Yeah. Or two. Two or three.
Yep. It'll be fun.
We'll have to buy drinks for Dave.
And we get to see the bats.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. I don't even fucking care about the goddamn bats.
No, that's no attitude.
No fucks to give about the bats. It is absolutely an attitude. It's absolutely the attitude that I want to have and I choose to have.
All right, so I'm the parent in the front seat. You're the child in the back seat.
No, I'm not.
And you're saying, I don't care about the bats. So I'm going to say, now that's no attitude to have, Marie. You're going to enjoy this. You're going to enjoy this.
That's what's fucked up about parenting. Like, I've read 5 pages in a book about parenting. And so now I know that parenting, it seems like parenting is just invalidating a child all day long. The common phrases that parents are always saying is no, do you really feel like that? No, you need to go and hug them. No, give them a kiss. Every phrase is about invalidating. No, you don't really feel that way. No, you don't really hate your sister. No,
You shouldn't be having that attitude.
Yeah. So why do you think we grow up so fucking insecure? I think the way that we're raising our kids emotionally is
absolutely. This goes back to Christianity, because the default of the human condition is to derail.
Yep.
And if you're not parented, your default condition, your innate condition, is that you're going to be a bad, self-destructive person and cause harm and evil. And so, train a child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it. So, like, if they do not curtail, and in your words, invalidate your impulses, your instincts, then your instincts will kill you.
Get the best of you. Yeah.
So they have to. It's their responsibility to rein you in, because your default is evil. It's almost like a wild horse. You got to break it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I think what you're saying is, don't break me. I mean, there wasn't anything wrong with me. I'm innately good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm both. I mean, but I'm give me a chance to express myself and find who I am.
Yeah. Right. Like the book talks about, like, your kid comes home from school and they're pissed because, like, they got in trouble for hitting someone who called them stupid or whatever. And, like, maybe the average parent would be like, but you don't hit. That's not okay. Yeah, but he called me. No, you don't hit or whatever. And the book is like, maybe you just sit there with your kid and you let them talk about their feelings. Like, oh, you must have been really upset when they said that to you. And then the kid can talk about that and kind of work through it. And they just want to be heard.
Yeah.
They want to be validated, but I think we just invalidate our kids so quickly. Yeah. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know that it's necessarily religion or Christianity, or I don't know what it is.
I think it's good advice what you're saying, because, and what book is this, by the way?
Oh shit! I already had to return it.
Oh, it's okay. But why are you reading parenting books? You trying to get pregnant?
No, someone advised me to read it.
Okay.
Because I was trying to research effective communication strategies for people.
Okay, it's not important. I'll take that out.
I'm going to look it up.
Okay.
So the book is called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and Listen So Kids Will Talk.
Wow. Cool. So to start out with, hey, you seem upset. Tell me about it. Talk about what you're feeling and how that makes you feel or whatever. Somewhere in there, it might not hurt, especially if it's only the first time, big deal. But if there starts to be a pattern of violence, I do think that you have to eventually say, this isn't going to solve your problem.
Right. Right. It's not an indefinite for always just listen.
I think most people just start with that. They just start with, okay, you've done wrong. And just literally almost bypass their feelings.
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because they did something wrong doesn't mean that bypassing their feelings is the way to go. You can still be present with their feelings and still address the issue practically, I think. Again, don't have kids, so fuck me. I don't know.
Well, when getting back to communication, and I know that your work, that would be something that would benefit your coaching and things. I recommend Marshall Rosenberg's stuff on nonviolent communication.
Yeah, the guy with the puppets. Have you ever read any of his
stuff? Maybe.
Yeah.
I've never seen him do puppet stuff.
Oh yeah, he does puppets. I watched a video of him. He had a giraffe and like a rhino talking to each other.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, good talk. See you Friday.
All right, see you, dude.